What's going on, Buffs Nation? Excited to finally get this video out. This has been on my mind for a while, wanting to talk about Shedeur Sanders and his NFL hopes. I've seen a lot of videos and content circulating on YouTube or on Twitter about his NFL potential. While I haven't been able to watch a lot of them yet, I thought I would take a little bit different of an angle from the few videos that I have watched and things that I've read on Twitter, and hopefully you'll find this insightful. Before I get started, I wanted to highlight another content creator. This is Prime Sports Media. He put together a 30-minute video regarding this topic that definitely deserves more traffic and recognition than it's getting right now, so I've linked it in the description. Please go ahead and check that out, as well as subscribe to him. He's almost at that 1K mark. Let's help him get there. Alright, so hit that like and let's get started now. So I thought I would start first by just checking out some different NFL scout draft websites, seeing what they have to say about Shedeur. One in particular, NFL Draft Buzz, they have Shedeur ranked right now as the number 7 college quarterback regardless of classification year. And they see him right now as a late second round draft pick. And I thought this was really interesting because I can name a few guys off the top of my head that have played FCS competition, that stayed there for their entirety until they graduated or declared, and it didn't seem like that was used as much against them. You know, particularly I'm thinking of Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, but maybe some of you old-timers can help answer this for me. But I mean, how can we go from Doug Williams in 1978, where first round draft pick, it didn't seem like him playing against HBU competition was used against him in any regard, and is one of the best quarterbacks ever. But then as we get closer into the 2000s, you have Steve McNair playing in HBCUs used against him. A lot of people are talking about that with Shedeur, played against HBCUs, but I mean, you got to turn on the tape. And I didn't watch a ton of Jackson State last year. I watched like 3 games, but I will say in particular in that Celebration Bowl, a lot of those guys on the North Carolina Central team, those guys are dogs. And if you watch that game where Shedeur threw 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, kept his team in the game, wish they would have won, but it is what it is. It's clear. It is so clear that he can play. And he's not playing against slouches. I thought I would go ahead and compare a little bit some of these FCS quarterbacks, what they did to earn their draft status, their first round draft status, what Shedeur has done in his 2 years at the FCS level at Jackson State, and also at the end I'll get into what differentiates Shedeur from the rest of these quarterbacks and why I think his upside is greater than all of these guys. All right, so first let's look at the completion percentage. You know, when quarterbacks come out into the NFL draft, a big emphasis is put on completion percentage. I think back a few years ago to when Josh Allen came out, that was a huge deal for him. And he's kind of been the outlier in the NFL where he didn't have a very good completion percentage. I think he just completed somewhere a little bit north of 60% of his passes at Wyoming. But he was able to fix those accuracy issues in the NFL, which doesn't happen very often. Now, when looking at the completion percentage right now of what Shedeur has done at the FCS level compared to Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, Joe Flacco. Right, Joe Flacco coming out of Delaware, drafted in the first round, I think it was 17th overall in 2008 by the Ravens. Coming out of the FCS, his career completion percentage was 63%. We're looking next at Carson Wentz, who was drafted 2nd overall by the Philadelphia Eagles. His completion percentage was 64%. And then we look at Trey Lance, who just a few years ago was drafted 3rd overall by the San Francisco 49ers from North Dakota State, threw for a completion percentage of 65% on about half the amount of throws that Carson Wentz had. Now we're looking at Shedeur Sanders, took a big jump. Career-wise, just a little bit over 68% completion percentage, and this past year took a big jump from 64% up to 70% of his passes completed. He shows big-time accuracy, and people often like to say, well, look at the guys that he was playing with. He was playing with guys that should have been playing at FBS level schools. Well, I mean, you could say the same for Carson Wentz and Trey Lance as well. People have compared their program to the Alabama of the FCS. I mean, you see they're throwing to big, huge guys like 6'5", Christian Watts. I just wish we can remain consistent when we're breaking down and judging these quarterbacks. Now let's take a look at the passing yards. Now Trey Lance only really had one full year starting and then a couple more games where he played. He threw career-wise for 2,900 yards. Carson Wentz started all 4 years at the FCS level, threw for 5,100 yards. Now, one thing that really made Joe Flacco pop off after his last year at Delaware, he threw for over 4,100 yards at Delaware, which is just insane. And he had a little bit over 7,000 career passing yards. But Shedeur Sanders is right there, just a little bit over 6,800 passing yards on a much higher completion percentage, I might add, which I think is great. And then let's get into the touchdown to interception ratio. And again, this is where Shedeur Sanders really sets himself apart from these other guys. Carson Wentz, 45 career touchdowns to 14 picks. It's about a 3-to-1 ratio. Trey Lance, again, this was something that despite having not the best completion percentage number, 65%, a lot of people like the fact that he didn't turn the ball over. 30 touchdowns to 1 interception in his 19 games played. Joe Flacco, 41 touchdowns compared to 15 interceptions. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Shedeur Sanders has 70 touchdown passes in 2 years playing FCS ball and just 14 interceptions. That's a crazy, insane ratio. Again, with his high percentage, completion percentage, it shows that he's accurate and a good decision maker. Again, I think it's pretty clear that Shedeur Sanders is on the level of these guys, if not greater. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, David, like those guys were drafted in the first round, but none of them turned into Hall of Fame players. You know, Joe Flacco had some great years for the Ravens, won a Super Bowl. The jury's still out on Trey Lance. Again, he's had some freak injuries and some difficulties getting on the field. And then Carson Wentz, again, his decision-making, which also has led to him taking a lot of hits, and his inability to stay on the field has kind of cut his career short as well. But I do think that Shedeur, his ceiling is higher than these guys for a couple of other reasons. Not only because statistically he performed better at that level than all of them, but also we got to remember that he was an FBS recruited quarterback. He's an FBS quality guy. Like he could have started for a handful of FBS teams last year. And now what's so great about it is that because he still has at least one more year to play, he has the ability to play against that Power 5 competition and show out even more, showing that, you know, he's truly deserving of being a top NFL draft pick. He has the ability to cement himself already as the greatest quarterback to play for CU in just 1 year. And I think that's going to drive a lot of notoriety. He's extremely intelligent. He's smart. None of these other quarterbacks work with Tom Brady. He works with Tom Brady. He gets to learn from his dad, who's one of the best athletes, people of all time, one of the most accomplished humans already of all time. He already operates as a professional. And one point that I did want to bring up from Prime Sports Media is that it's true. Coach Prime is running this whole thing in preparation. He's running this whole thing like an NFL operation. He's getting everybody prepped for the NFL, and of course, that includes his son. One of my last points I wanted to bring up of why I think Shedeur is definitely a first-round draft pick is because of how the salary cap works in the NFL now and how much more valuable top quarterbacks are on their rookie contract now that there's a slot for money for every single pick. Before 2011, you had to negotiate with every pick, And a lot of these guys coming in would already get paid like they're NFL superstars, and then they would bust. It would handicap teams. And so there was a lot more value in waiting to pick a quarterback later. But now, when all that stuff is slotted in, you get the fifth-year option, you're able to spend the majority of your salary cap on the rest of your team to fill out a great supporting cast for your young franchise quarterback. I think that's why you're seeing more and more quarterbacks as time goes on go in that first round. And so I would expect Shedeur to be a first-round pick, talked about a first-round pick this year after the 2023 season is over, but I'm hoping that he stays because I think that there is potential for him to be that number one pick in 2025. I know Caleb Williams is pretty much that expected guy to be the first overall pick this next year. Again, that could totally change, but I think Shedeur, who would at that time have 4 full years of starting quarterback experience at the Division I level, 2 at the FCS, 2 at the FBS Power 5, and with the numbers and wins that he's going to put up for the Buffaloes, I don't see why he wouldn't be considered for that top pick. And it seems like the media wants to focus on the weaknesses of some prospects more than others. Again, a great comparison is Josh Allen and how he had accuracy issues, but he had a lot of physical tools to become successful. And then you look at Lamar Jackson, great completion percentage, Heisman winner, dynamic, and so many teams and draft experts overlooked him because he was a little bit smaller. Maybe he didn't have as good of an arm, but he has a great arm. But it's like with some of these QB prospects, people choose to excuse the weaknesses with one player and choose to focus on them with the other. Shedeur has everything that you want. Okay, he's not 6'5", but he does have good size to be an NFL quarterback. 6'2", 215 pounds. I bet by the time he enters the NFL, he'll be around that 225, 230 mark. And we have guys that are getting drafted first overall that are 5'10 and under, 190 pounds and under. He's going to have the size to withstand punishment in the NFL. He's going to have the size to stay durable. He has the height to see over the offensive line. People forget to bring this up. He is extremely intelligent. He's a great decision maker, and you're only going to see his making ability grow as he continues to play more. So again, I want to know what you guys think, Buffs Nation, but I think overall in 2024, people will be talking about him being a first-round draft pick, and we'll see if he decides to declare or not. I'm hoping that he sticks around for one more year after. You don't want to cut this family time short, but I want to know what y'all think, Buffs Nation. Thanks for tuning in, and Sko Buffs.